Welcome back. Here we're going to solve the challenge 2 problem. And to do this, I'm going to start with a quick memory jog to just see what does this program do again? So when you run this program, it asks you to start the survey, and you get to type in the ID of anybody. Just going to make one up. Who will win the next World Series? There's only 4 choices, letter A, B, C, or D, as we've been seeing. You could put in another ID, you could put another person, and when you're done, as of right now, okay, apparently this is a bunch of data that I made previously because I was running I was running this code. Good, that's fine. So, okay, let's see here. Okay, great. So I went ahead and actually made some data, and that's why I printed it out. But what it does is it takes in these answers and puts out the answer. Puts out a display, a summary display. But what we wanted to do is we were ready to print the histogram, and that is the pseudocode that we wrote last time. So for each thing inside the database, we are going to try to figure out how to do this histogram. So I'm going to just take my pseudocode and I'm going to fill it in line by line. So I want to make these variables, and I'm going to initialize them all to 0. What are these? Well, these are things for keeping track of the total number of each type of answer. And you'll notice I'm assuming there are only 4. I'm assuming that this data is valid. So if you didn't write the code previously on how to validate your data, that might be a good time. All right, so I'm just going to have A tote, B tote, C tote, and D tote. Those are the totals. So total number of A answers, and so on and so forth for B, C, and D. Okay, now that I have those variables made, I need to figure out what a given answer is inside the database. So by the way, if you prefer, we can actually put .keys here. This is going to go through all of the keys in the database. It's implied. So this little part right here, it is optional. It's implied. P will take on the value of each key. And in our case, the letter P, that is to say, the key inside there is taking on whatever the string is that represents the ID of the person. Okay, so now that we have that, I want to so the answer, and we'll just be very clear, is going to be P with, it's going to be database with that key. I'm going to give you a second to think about this. So what's the value of the key on each time through the loop? Just take 5 seconds. See if you can remember which variable this is. Correct, it is P. So that's the value of the key, because that's, as we run through this for loop, that's what happens. So we're having answer is this, and then we're going to say if the answer is A, then I want A tote to become A tote plus 1. Yes, it would be fine with me if you prefer this syntax of A tote plus equals 1. If you prefer this syntax, you may use it. It's the same as this line. Okay, and then I think you can see what's coming. I'm just going to then do this. Going to get all the answers going. Okay, B tote is B tote plus 1. Maybe I should use that special syntax. Okay, I'm just going to type all these in. There's not that many of them. And finally. And why didn't I use an else down on this last one? Interesting. Well, I think I didn't use an else because it is possible there's some invalid data in there. And if that's true, then I really just want to ignore that. So that's why I was explicit on all these. Okay, so I've just put in these if statements to find out whether the answer was A, B, C, or D, and by the end of this little block of things, we should have proper, the variables should be in the proper state. So all this for loop does so far is it creates these variables. It doesn't actually create our histogram. So that's fine. Now we need to print the histogram. Okay, so there are a few ways to do this. and I think we're just gonna do one by hand here. Actually, string A is going to be the letter A. And by the way, the way strings work is you can concatenate them. So if you ever forget how strings work, you can go right into Python console and you can say some new string. And you're trying to remember, can I do this? Is a letter. Okay, some new string. Look at that, it smushes them all together. And if I wanted to do a plus, let's say 8 times, this is a little bit of a strange thing. Let's say the letter B. See what happens here. So what this does, it turns out you can use the multiplication symbol, which is asterisk in Python. You can multiply it by a string and it will make many of those in a row. So this has taken 8 of the letter B. So this term right here became 8 of the letter B, and it gets smoshed onto A. So this is not addition in the algebraic sense of the word addition. In technical Python jargon, what we'd say is that the plus operator is overloaded. The plus operator works with integers, it works with floats, it works with strings. It has different behaviors in these different cases. And that actually, to take a brief detour into very jargony Python facts, very specific technical facts, this is something that makes Python a little bit unique. In certain other languages, you would have to explicitly say what's happening. Oh, I'm adding 2 strings, and I want this certain behavior. In Python, the plus operator is overloaded. Okay, so not only did we just learn about strings, we learned about some Python specialness. So this is what happens when it multiplies, and this is why I was telling you in the previous video that it would be kind of confusing to do this. See, because I've got the times. That will create 8 asterisks in a row, but I think that syntax is a little confusing right there. See that? How there's a asterisk and a quote and an asterisk? That's a little weird. So what I might do is I might make a variable here that keeps track of the character we want to display. Display char, or display character. Is that a good, you know what? That's kind of a long variable name. How about our symbol? I'm just going to make our symbol be the asterisk so that now I could do something much more clear. I could do a tot times symbol. What do you think of that? I think this syntax right here is more clear than putting these 2 asterisks. So if we ever are not sure if it works, we should just try things in the shell. And I guess by we, I mean you and also me. Great. So we have symbol and we want to see, will it work? Can we do things like this? I don't know why I'm stuck on the number 8. Just stuck on number 8 right now. Look at that. So 8 times symbol, where symbol is a variable that contains a string, and that string contains the character asterisk. 8 times it will create this. So I think what you're seeing here is I can actually make lines that are as long as I want, right? I can make, okay, let's make 35 of them. That sounds like a good number. Okay, this is way too much fun. I could also just only make 2 of them. And if I had a variable, in this case I'm going to have a variable called a tot. Let's pretend that there were, I don't know, 10 people answered letter A. So now my question is, can I do a tot times symbol? It's a little weird. 2 variables right there. What are the data types of these variables? Well, this one right here is an integer, and this second one here is a string. And an integer times a string causes that string to be repeated that integer number of times. And let's make sure that I'm telling you the right thing. I don't think that we can do decimals times a string, but I'm going to do that now. Let's do something 415926535. So approximately pi. Hopefully we've got an error here. Yay! We can't have half an asterisk. We can't have 0.14159266535 of an asterisk. So you got to have an integer there. All right, I think we've discovered things. So string A is going to be this. And what do I mean by string A? I really just mean the first line of our histogram. So you could have called this histogram line 1. I just decided to call it string A. You know what? I'm going to go ahead and call it line 1. I think that's more clear. Okay, so line 2, I think you can guess what's going to happen. It's going to say B, and there's going to be btote, also times symbol. Okay, and we're going to go ahead and do this 2 more times for lines 3 and 4 of the histogram. And you know, there really are other ways to solve this problem. You could use for loops if you prefer. Okay, so now I'm building up these strings that I'm interested in. Okay, and I'm doing sort of a visual check. Did I get letter B with letter B? Did I get letter C with letter C? Okay, looks so far so good. And then we're just going to print all these. Print line 1. So this should be my histogram. If I really want, which I might really want, hold on a second here, 4, maybe I'll say results of the survey, or maybe I'll say summary of the survey. Okay, cool. So what that should do is it should print, if everything went well, it should make us a histogram which analyzes these letters. Oh, right. So, getting rid of this pseudocode. Okay. I don't think I need this little message anymore. Alright, we're going to run this. Let me make sure I've got the right shelf. Oh, I forgot to mention. Whenever you put, I mentioned this a couple videos ago, but I want to remind you, whenever you put the name, you put something in quotes inside shelf.open, it's going to go ahead and it's going to create a file that's called that. So if I run this one right now, I think temp data might have nothing in it. So let's, whoops, sorry about that. Let's find out. I think I'll get an error here. J was not an option, but I didn't put the validator in. Okay. Now let's quit. Okay. Hey, look. It already is starting to work. So I just made a brand new fresh, this was a brand new, this temp data thing. I just made a brand new fresh one. I provided answer D for a person who had ID 4. And look, it showed up as an answer of D. It didn't give us anything else because there were no other things. And look, it didn't make a line for this invalid answer J because we had this clever decision in here to use elifs instead of putting in any else. So there is no else clause. If it's not A, not B, not C, and not D, there's nothing that happens. We're not keeping track of it. Wow, cool. All right, so let's see if it works on my other data. Gonna take a quick, just because I'm really in the zone right now, I want to tell you, how would you delete this file, and is it okay to delete this file if a program runs on it? Well, if you have a lot of data inside a shelf, I would not recommend spontaneously deleting it. Word of caution, anytime you're at, this is called the command line, you're talking directly to the brain of the computer. It's as if you are a neurosurgeon and you have a patient on the operating table whose skull is open and you are operating on their brain. It's a very serious matter. So you need to be very careful when you're at the terminal, or also called the command line. So in general, we don't want to go, rampaging through the file system, deleting things at our whim, but in my case, I'm done with this because that was just a temporary little program. So this is actually the command to delete it. rm tempdata.db. I'm going to run that command and get rid of that. Wow, look, there was no feedback. That's how powerful the shell is. It assumes you know what you're doing. It doesn't give you nice little messages. Okay, but demo survey is the one where I think I had this other data. I'm going to go back and change this. Back to this, and then I'm going to run this program. Let's run this program here. And here, no, I don't really want to run the survey again. I just want to see the results. And look, there are the results. Let's zoom in on that because that is so profound and cool. What we've just done, I find this very satisfying. I love it when my programs work. My programs don't usually work the first time, but I am inspired right now, so apparently this worked the first time. So let's just review what happened there. We were trying to solve challenge 2 from a couple of videos ago. We were trying to print a histogram. We're trying to, in other words, print like a sideways bar chart here in the Python console. And what should happen is it should go in the database and it should count how many answers there are of each variety, and it should print them line by line. So this is very exciting. I think this is kind of beautiful in its own nerdy computer way. I'm going to recap the code we wrote, and then I'll exit this video. So first we created, actually, you know what? This would be a good place to pause. Why don't you see if you can explain this code? So pause the video, explain the approach that we took, and if you really want to review and make sure you understand, go back to the pseudocode and write this from scratch yourself without referring to the video. So go ahead and pause it now. Okay, and whenever you're done, resume. I'm resuming now. So first thing, we initialized some variables to keep tallies. You could also call these counter variables because we're counting things. We went in, we retrieved an item, so this was a read operation. We read something back from the database. We checked whether it was one of the valid answers, and we incremented. Yeah, there is a little bit of repetition here, and you could see if we had a lot of code, you might want to wrap this into a function. This might be a nice little function to write. I'll leave that to you. And then we built these strings by hand because I wanted them to print nicely on one line. So actually, let's do a fun thing. I want to change the symbol. I decided I want it to print out. I wanted to print out dollar signs. Actually, you know what? That's really realistic because if you've ever gone online to look at reviews of, let's say, I don't know, restaurants or something, they often have dollar signs to show how expensive they are. Is this a restaurant that's affordable, or is this a pretty expensive restaurant? So I'm going to see if my program's going to work now with this new addition of these dollar signs. Hey, look at that. Instead of asterisks, it now prints dollar signs. So, that was the conclusion of solving the challenge problem. Thanks for watching. Subscribe to the channel. Go program lots of Python and have fun. You're doing great.